More like the Boner Temple. It's already been 7 months since the last 28 Years Later movie, and for me, that was one of the best films of last year. Danny Boyle returned. It was a complete stylistic pivot from what we had grown used to, so I went into 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, a little excited but also trepidatious, because this entry is helmed by Nia DaCosta, the director of the Candyman remake and last year's Hedda, and I haven't been the biggest fan of her films. So the big question is, how does the Bone Temple measure up to last year's 28 Years Later and the rest of the 28 movies? We pick up right where the last one left off, where young Spike, played by Alfie Williams, is inducted into the Gang of the Jimmies, led by Sir Jimmy Crystal, played by Jack O'Connell. They're a roving band of maniacs, and Jimmy Crystal is their maniacal leader. Meanwhile, Dr. Kelson, played by Ray Fiennes, continues his strange friendship with Samson, the alpha of the infected, who's hanging massive dong. Kelson might be lonely, but he's also a scientist, and his continued experiments on Samson might just reveal new depths to the infected. As Spike tries to survive Jimmy and his deadly gang, they start on a collision course with Dr. Kelson, and what will be a confrontation between science and faith that might determine the fate of poor young Spike. Last year's 28 Years Later was kind of an unexpected gem. I was definitely anticipating it, but I didn't expect the emotional wallop that it carried. The Bone Temple is more a meat and potatoes horror thriller. That's to say, it has less to do with the infected and more to do with the monstrousness of man. As exemplified by Jack O'Connell, his Jimmy Crystal, who was the little boy at the very beginning of the last movie, is a modern-day cult leader, a stunted man whose childhood was literally ripped from him, and who now regains power by leading this band of lunatics and torturing poor victims on the countryside. O'Connell has been around for a long time, and he's been an actor I've often been indifferent to, if not downright indignant to. But with last year's Sinners, and now this role, he has come a long way and has really carved a niche for himself as a villain. Jimmy Crystal feels like a thoroughly modern invention, and there are shades of Malcolm McDowell's Alex DeLarge from A Clockwork Orange, but O'Connell brings layers of depth to Jimmy that slowly reveal themselves over the film, and especially once we get the confrontation between him and Ray Fiennes' Dr. Kelson. This is the Ray Fiennes Show, and at this point, after countless Oscar nominations and incredible performances, Ray Fiennes is simply the GOAT. Think about this. This is the fourth installment of a popular horror franchise being led by a Shakespearean actor who's over 60, totally ripped, totally game for anything, and totally just rocking the shit in every scene. He was kind of the beating heart of the last film, and he's exactly that in this one. It's just such a joy to see Fiennes find the playfulness in this character. And he puts on one hell of a show at the film's end that I won't spoil. Simply put, it is one of the most go-for-it and enjoyable actor showcases I've seen in quite a while. His performance is metal as fuck. I would even say that he's probably more deserving of an Oscar nom for this than he was for Conclave. Even though this is a little more down the line than the last one, it's still quite a subversion from what we expect for these types of movies, because there's always a human core at the center. Now, let me be honest, I do miss the style of Boyle's last film. It was shot on an iPhone. It was kind of as gritty and lo-fi as the original 28 Days Later. And it had that incredible score by the Young Fathers, which really amped up the energy and brought unexpected pathos to it. That's all to say, though, that director Nia DaCosta takes the ball from Boyle and runs with it. She does a good job holding steady this franchise while keeping its identity intact and infusing a little bit of her own style into it. It's not as subversive and as exciting as Boyle's entries, and in some ways it's reminiscent of the first sequel, 28 Weeks Later, and that movie wasn't as experimental with its style. It was shot on film, it was a little more conventionally made, but what the movie lacks in viscerality, it makes up for in viscera, because this is the grisliest and gnarliest and nastiest entry in this franchise. Jimmy and his gang of Jimmies are violent, cruel, and sadistic, and we see the full brunt of their religious-like mania, which means barely any of it is directed at the infected. It's mostly directed at human beings. So those who are just expecting your typical zombie kills might get more than they bargained for. It doesn't have the thematic richness of the last one, which was about accepting death in a time that feels so hopeless. But it does bring all these characters together and pays off in satisfying, if a little predictable ways. That's the thing about Boyle's last movie. I had no idea where it was going by the end. For this one, I could kind of suss out how the beats were going to go and where we might end up, even down to the coda that ends the film and leads us to the next installment. But we also get Ralph Fiennes dropping trow and hanging his own dong. So you know what? There are a few surprises. 28 years later, the Bone Temple can't quite match the stylistic bravura of the last film. But director Nia DaCosta capably handles the franchise and shepherds two excellent performances from Ralph Fiennes and Jack O'Connell. I give 28 years later, the Bone Temple a respectable 3.5 stars out of 5. If you like this review, please like and subscribe or follow me on Letterboxd at RamirezS316. You know, I almost thought about shaving my head and rubbing myself down in iodine, but instead, I think I'll drop trow.